everybody. All right, now we know for sure that we're ready to go. We're recording the session. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is the first session of day 2 for the IT Professionals Conference. So thanks for joining us yesterday, if you were joining us virtually or in person, especially for those that were there in person. It was probably nice to see your face yesterday. So we got a couple of great presenters here to talk more about AI and how they're using it. And I'm excited to learn about this whole vibe programming concept. So today we have Dexter Fierro and John Graham from UW-Madison. John has some experience working with Dex has some experience working at UW-Stout. So we're happy to have him on the Madison team now. We have a short session. It's only about 30 minutes or so. So I'm going to turn it right over to them.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. So I'm Dexter Fierro, and this is using Vibe programming with AI to transform black and white presentations, to transform black and white data into visual dashboards, I should say. So I will jump right into this. So, all right. So the way that this is going to work is there's going to be a prompt over here on the right, and you don't have to read all this. In fact, I'd prefer you didn't. I'm going to go through what makes it important and what I told the AI to get the result that I wanted. So the first prompt is, I'm making a professional business dashboard to show sales for a box company. Could you suggest a gradient theme for the background? So in my prompt, I make sure to include the words professional and business because it confines the AI to the appropriate genre. It's going to consider the audience when suggesting color themes. So it's not going to be like some like visually challenging pink thing in the background that's distracting, right? It knows that the data is what's important for this. I also give it information like gradient because that tells Copilot necessary information about the themes for the colors. So like I said, that pink thing that it could create, not going to happen here. It also tells it that it needs to suggest the colors for me in pairs. So let's see what the AI said. So absolutely, professional business dashboard. You got it. Sleek, modern, easy on the eyes. This cool blue gradient, I didn't even have to read the rest because I've made something with that before. I know that that looks great. Additional to this, you can go in and ask it for the hexadecimal. You can ask it for where it's pulling this information. Use it as you trust it. So the hexadecimal values is something that I did, but I'm not going to, include 2 screenshots on one PowerPoint slide. So this is the background theme it suggested. I thought that looked pretty good to start. So now for the visualization prompt, right? So, hey, I'm creating a visualization in a professional business dashboard that shows sales per year over 4 years, but I'd also like it to show months. What's a good visualization to show these 2 values? Again, it jumps in. It's like, all right, right to the point. So this time in my prompt, I made sure to include the word visualization because there's a lot of ways that you can, make data available to people, right? Via a chart, via just like a table. But I wanted it to know that I'm looking specifically for some sort of visualization, something that's going to look good on a dashboard. Again, I say professional business. It's not going to suggest anything super wonky or artsy. If I say that, it's not going to give me something that I don't have the ability to create. And it's going to keep the theme professional. I also told it that I want to show annual, sum, and monthly in the same visualization. That tells it that I'm putting, 2 measures on the same axis so that it's suggesting things that have that ability. It suggested stacked bar chart, which I agreed with right away, and then line chart with multiple series, which would be great if we were using it that way. For this specific dashboard, I'm not looking for trends. I'm looking to, break it out for like what sells where, as you'll see when we get to the dashboard. So here's the next one. So I thought, you know what? I know what it's going to do. It's going to create that stacked bar chart. And it's going to be a bunch of different distracting colors. So I said, for a stacked bar chart, I usually like to use one color theme and use different hues of it. Is there a color that would look good in a professional, business-like, and appealing dashboard when used with a blue to light blue gradient background? Jumps right in. And it says, yeah, I think that with the stacked bar chart, a blue to light blue gradient background, let's go with the blue color theme for it, blue monochromatic. So it starts to give me some hexadecimals here, which for some software you don't need, but for like if you're doing like Python or like Java and you want to like customize it, you have to have those. So anyway, I told it this time monochromatic theme, color that fits my background, and this is all in the same conversation, so it knows what I'm talking about. And I told it still needs to be professional in business, and it's up to you if you want to do that, but I like to confine the AI every time I ask it. So, uh, yeah, it will probably remember, but I just keep hitting it with it just to be like, don't go off track, stay where I need you. So this is what I created at first. This first one is the stacked bar chart, right? This is the Tableau 20. This is just your standard color scheme that it gives you. And colors contrast with the background. There's well-defined boundaries, but there's a lot of different primary colors here. For me personally, when I first started looking at this, I saw no issue, right? Because I'm like, hey, it's data. It's organized. It looks good to me. But the problem is I get a lot of feedback that this looks distracting. It doesn't fit with the theme. It just doesn't look like I put a lot of effort into it. So this is what it suggested after, where it says, hey, the colors complement the background. It's still well-defined boundaries. There's a lot less primary colors. And I think the dark theme is easier on the eyes because for me, I'm staring at data like this all day. So I use a dark theme, gives me less headaches. It also maintains a professional business appeal. So this is what we went with. But I thought, you know what? That white behind there with this background, not really digging. So background additions. This time I said, after some visualizations, I needed some additional boxes to define the boundaries. I want to know what colors work. So I say, this is the prompt. What's a professional business-oriented color that nicely contrasts with a blue gradient background? And it starts going in, it says orange or gold, white or light gray, dark navy, charcoal. Charcoal for my dark theme. Yeah, orange or gold, maybe if that was our school color, but not for me. So I also built all of this with an external tool, just so you know. I have a tool that builds like PDF or PNG for the background. Up to you guys what you want to use, but the tool that I use selects an image to put on the background. So I built it all with that. Now for the second visualization, and you can see this is the darker theme. I said, what's a good visualization to represent sales for products in different regions? I want to show which products by region generate the most sales. So this one, we're using geographic information by sales region. So I'm using a state here. It doesn't need to know that. It just knows for sales regions. It knows that I'm quantifying, quantity or sales by state because I told it that. And it gives me a list of these. And honestly, my first thought was tree map. So it's a good thing that I asked the AI on this because it says, hey, why don't you use a heat map with geographic location? That's a fantastic idea. So props to the AI on this because it actually suggested a very neat alternative where it's actually a geographic map. So this is the end of the end product dashboard. And keep in mind, this is just something simple. And even if this is something that you wouldn't build because you have something more complex or something more like simple, it's up to you. To choose your own adventure. You're guiding the AI to give you the color scheme behind all of this. And it just kind of goes to show you that you can use AI at any different level. Here is the background. Here is the dashboard actually in Tableau. And you can see, it has all of the months labeled. You can clearly see the boundaries between them. And the cool thing about Tableau is it's got the detail. Plus, it's cross-filterable. So if we wanted to see New York, filters to it right away. You want to see it in quantity. There you go for Texas, right? So it'll give you all of the information you need sorted out to tell us where are we selling what products. But cool thing is I used AI for all of the color schemes, and previously I would have struggled with that. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague John. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and I'll dive in. Dex is going to run the slides rather than us try and switch back and forth and run any risks. So before I jump in and show you what I was doing, I just kind of want to give you an overview of the tools and methods that I've used so far. So on the next slide, you can see kind go ahead and hit the next one. We've got some of the instances that I've worked with is VS Code with Copilot through GitHub Education, Code with Gemini Code Assist, which is an extension, VS Code through Terminal with Claude 3.7 Code is what it's called. They have 4.0 out now. I haven't tested that one yet. It's pretty new. And then the demo today is Cursor AI that gives you access to multiple LLMs that you can kind of hit. And one of the options in there is also auto, because it will automatically pick whichever one seems to be most available for them at the same time. So in the demo, what I'm doing is actually doing a data transformation on some data to prepare it for a visualization tool. And so I'm using pandas with Python. For some of the visualization tools, I've used Plotly. And today's example, I'm actually using Highcharts JS, which is one that you can get an education license on a yearly basis. So on the next slide, we just highlight that this example is Cursor AI. And then on the next one, you got it, Dex. You're on it. So for those that aren't familiar, I felt like I needed to kind of reference this. There's kind of 3 different levels. You kind of have your manual approach, which is what you're familiar with a lot when you copy and paste in the ChatGPT or Gemini. So you're copying and pasting back and forth between your tooling. When you get to the next level where you're using Ask, you're actually working in your IDE, in this case, Visual Studio Code. And with Ask, you have a conversation with the AI, and then it'll give you suggestions on code changes or code from scratch, and it will allow you to apply those. So if you're familiar with GitHub or Git from a process standpoint, it'll show you those changes, and then you kind of click and hit accept, and then it'll copy that code in for you. And it will also look at multiple files. But the next level up is also agent. So you always hear about agent AI. And agent AI is taking that to a whole nother level where you can look at multiple files, you can look at an entire project, kind of just based off of the number of tokens that the LLM will allow you to have. And it will also automatically apply those changes, and it can start to do kind of iterative changes to the code on its own. And I touch on that a little bit more in just a second. So next slide, Cursor AI. So this is, man, you were on it, Dex. So this is what Cursor AI looks like. It should look exactly like Visual Studio Code if you're familiar with that. On the far left is where your project files would be. In the center is where the code of the file that it's working on is going to be. And I mention this because you'll see it come up at some point. And then on the far right, you'll see the conversation. So that's where the chat window is. And on the bottom, there's also a terminal instance. So, and there's kind of 2 terminal instances that can occur. Kind of one that's, manual down on the bottom center. And on the right, when you're having the conversation with chat, it will also allow you to kind of run terminal commands in there. And in the demo, it'll ask, do you want to run this? So think of that as 2 places to run terminal commands. So at the top right where the chat window was, you can see, you can click in it, those 3 options were there. Agent, Ask, and Manual. Today's example is using the agent. So just more conversational. This is what the vibe programming, what I'm going to say, big kick is. So that's the term, but it's just using the agent. All right, on the next slide, I clicked right next to it, and you could see here's the different models that it has, and there's other ones, but I shut a lot of them off. So in this instance, you'll see that I always have auto off with Cursor AI to give you a certain amount of interactions. They tend to be high speed at first, and then you run out of credits, and then it does it at the slow speed. And the auto is the way for it to kind of pick whichever one it can that has the most resources for at the moment. I don't use auto. I touch on that again in just a second. So let's dive in. On the next slide, what I want to do is I want to explain the problem. I want to suggest kind of the tooling, because if you don't explain that, hey, I've already decided I kind of want this to be a Python project, um, it's going to give you other suggestions, which is okay. You can start with those, high level, give me some suggestions on ways to do this as well. So give it lots of details. So on the next one, we'll see the prompt. And so in this prompt, I'm not going to read it, just like Dex said, but rather than saying a business approach, I said, let's just use UW branding colors. So it's going to also find out what the branding colors are for us. And one of the things that I kind of want to mention, and you don't see it a ton in this example, but when you write a prompt to an agent, I think is fascinating, because a lot of the agents, if you have like a thinking model, all it does is take your prompt and write a really, really long prompt. And if you watch what's happening on the right side, you can say, the user wants to try and accomplish this and blah, blah, blah. And it'll even say things that the user says that this isn't working, but my tests show that it is. So it has all sorts of thinking process. And it's fun to try and watch that, because if you watch that, you also learn that maybe I need to tweak my questions a little bit on the next time you try to approach it. All right. So enough talking there. And on this one, so here it is. And at the risk of doing a live demo, I just recorded this already. So Dex is going to hit play on this. And you can see in the top left, I have a blank CSV file that just kind of has the headers of what the data set, what I kind of want to use for a data set. So I dropped in the prompt, and the system is thinking about the prompt. It knows that I'm going to try and access that publication CSV file. So it's going to go read that CSV file, get an understanding of it. And you kind of saw a little bit of the thinking there. And it says, hey, I've seen this, but there's really no data in it. Do you want me to create some dummy data? And I'm like, yeah, let's create some dummy data for this. So now it's going to think, and it's going to add some dummy data to that CSV file. And you'll see that pop up in the middle of the screen, because then that's going to be the open file that we're working on. So now there's our dummy data. Now it's put it into the file. And now what this has done is it's taken the dummy data and it's writing a Python script right now. You could see that it says transform_data.py. So it's thinking about that. And you're going to see that file create over on the left as well. And so now we have a Python script that's going to do the data transformation. And it's asking over in the chat window, do we want to run the command? And sure, let's run the command. You'll see an error. I'm on a Mac. I didn't realize I was using Python 3. So it said yes, yes, and now we've run it. Now, for the programmers out there, you can dive into the Python. You can validate it, see what's going on. Now, with this instance, I really wanted it to create the HTML. I just don't want to copy and paste this data that was transformed into JSON that high charts need. So can you have Python create the HTML for me? Because I didn't want to do that. I want to be kind of lazy today. So it's now going to write the high charts JS HTML code and put that as a template part of the Python script. So that's what it's doing now. It's thinking about it. It's adding that. And then here I open it up and you can just validate. Here's our Python code. We can scroll down to the bottom. We'll see the templating code for the HTML. So what we've got is a Python script that's going to do the data transformation and drop it into the HTML file. So you can see it run through the process. And is there anything else we can help you with? Nope. I think we're pretty good. So let's take a look on the next screen. For some reason, it always does the video twice. So here's our visualization that it just created. Go ahead and hit play on this. It created 14 records of dummy data. It's hierarchical data. So it's publications, then by department, by author, and then the type of publications that they did. And you can drill down, you can see the interactivity in this chart. I predetermined this chart. I happen to love this chart. So you're just kind of seeing the interactions. It's got tooltips, so you can see the number of publications by person, total, and type. So now that we've got the script, let's use it on a real data set. So outside of Cursor AI, I go over and give it my regular data set. It's got 18,000 nodes or 18,000 records in it. And I ran the script, just a couple seconds on the script. And if you hit play for this video, you can see we got 18,000. You can drill down to level 1. You got departmental level stuff. Let's go into a department. 3,000 publications here. Let's go into a certain author and see their breakdown of publications. So now we're at level 2, 3, I think. And so now you can kind of see how we've built this interactive visualization. So I'm leaning heavily on the existing code for high charts and using Python for the data transformations for that. So let's hit the next slide. And this is the last little bit here. Here's the tips that I have for anyone who wants to dive into this. Stick with one model. That's why I do not use auto. Every model is like working with a different developer. They all have different personalities. They have different process. They have different approaches. Claude likes to really build logging systems in there and normalize everything. It just is really intense, and I love it. But if you switch between one and the other, they get a little confused and they have kind of different methods. So just think of it, if you're handing coding off from one developer to another in the middle of a conversation, you wouldn't want to do that in the middle of a project. So stick with one, do not do auto. Start over. Sometimes the best way is to start over. I've had a 30-minute conversation trying to get AI to be smarter. I'm like, why are you doing this? You're not understanding this. And it keeps getting it wrong. Well, I like compare it to a conversation where you start with someone and you said something a little wrong and they misinterpreted it. And you spend the next 10 minutes trying to kind of convince them, no, forget what I said there. Well, you can do that with AI. Start over. In the instance that I said, I went 30 minutes down trying to get it to do what I wanted to do. And I said, oh, I just got to start over. Started over with a different prompt, because after that conversation, I'm like, here's some keywords that I need to use differently. And it knew exactly what I wanted. 2 minutes later, I had what I needed. So don't be afraid to start over. Next is don't let it run on its own. I'm not going to lie, it is pretty amazing. When I used Claude Code, it would build a logging system. It would read the logs. It would run the Python script. It would debug it because it would find the errors in the logging, go back and reiterate the Python and fix the code. And it is amazing. But the problem is, just like that conversation, I like to compare it to a snowball. If you tip it over the top of a mountain and it's off by 1 degree, by the time you get to the end of the mountain, you're off by 10 degrees. So don't do auto, take little steps, have the conversation and check in with it pretty frequently. The other thing is, I also love how it works with multiple files. If it says we need to change this method in this one, or it might call a method that's in a different file, it will go try and change the method in a different file to make sure that the code that it's writing doesn't break. The problem is, you might be working with 50 files, and it will go try to change those. And sometimes it does it on the sneaky side, So what I recommend is take little chunks, commit your code, and then pay attention to what it's changing, because it might change a different file. And you're like, oh, why did it change the login, or why did it change this method? Commit your code. Little steps, think of it as feature sets. Do it little steps. So commit your code. The next is, after you've had this, if you've had this conversation, it knows what it's trying to do. It understands what your goal is, to an extent. Ask it, what suggestions do you have? What might I have missed? What might be a better way? And that's kind of what Dexter was talking about too, when he, is given the different approaches. It's going to give you some suggestions, and it's a good way to give you some ideas. Next, it can write READMEs. It could do documentation for yourself, which is great. I love documentation. I just learned about mermaid charts, which is kind of a flow chart you can use and get. It does, charting, which I'm a visual learner, helps me understand the process flows that I'm developing. So use it to build those other pieces. And then last, ask it to write a developer reference. So before you close out that chat, go, hey, this is a great project. If I want to come back to this, can you detail out the process and how we've built this project so that the next time we want to add more features, we have a better starting point. And so the next time you come to it, completely new chat, new feature, you're starting over, you can say, read this document to acclimate yourself with this project and how it is coded. So that's a good way to give it your jumping point. So how we said going from developer to developer, that's going from feature to feature. So if you have to switch the LLM, or even if it's the new LLM, but it's a new instance of programming, it gives you a good starting point. And that kind of covers it all. And yes, you are correct. It does render in GitLab too, the mermaid charts. So I crammed a lot in there, but are there any questions for Dex and I?
Great job. Thanks, Dex, and thanks, John. This has been really, really interesting. I think there's been a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to ask one question that kind of gets back to the tips that John left is with all of so many different AI models or just different tools that are out there. How do you find the best one for what you're looking for? So I'm a system admin for a database. Is there ones that are particularly good at helping you write code or like I go to this one when I need to write Python. I go to this one when I need to write Java. I go to this one when I'm looking for formulas to build into my database. How do you find, are there any resources out there to help you to differentiate where's the best place to go?
Honestly, I just follow a few influencers.
Okay.
Because I follow it, and the reason I do that is it's changing so fast. So Claude 3.7 was my go-to. Like it was like, this is fantastic. And then Gemini 2.5 came out and it had a larger token set. So it had kind of a, I can look at more. And now I've been hearing that now that Claude 4 is out, Claude 4 has surpassed that, but I haven't gotten into Claude 4. So it's changing very fast. So I just kind of pay attention, but it's going to change in another week.
Exactly. Great. Thank you so much. There was a really important question in the chat, and I think that Dexter answered it, but maybe we can talk about it a little bit more in the last minute or two that we have, is the accessibility tool or accessibility question. There's a question related to when you're using an AI tool to create visualizations, how do you get assistance as it relates to making sure those visualizations are accessible to a lot of people's just differing learning styles or abilities?
Sure. So yeah, again, with just like I was tailoring it with professional and business every time, you just hit the AI with the demand that it's accessible. And then for me, I'd want to see like, where are you pulling that from? Like, what are you taking that's telling you that that's making it accessible? Because so for me, the professional theme is like the super important thing because I have a tailored audience, right? I've got like maybe less than 10 people that are going to look at something like that, but they're going to look at it frequently. And for some people who put it out on like the university's website that like it's open to the public, it's got to be out there for everybody. There's like, I believe some well-known things that you can do to tailor your audience and make your visualizations accessible to everybody. There's fonts that are bottom heavy for people with dyslexia. I haven't used it for this, but I have used AI for a number of weird applications like that, both personal and professional. And I'll say that as long as you ask the right prompt, and like John said, you just if it doesn't give you the right answer right away, you just reiterate it, right? You just come back in a different chat and ask it the same question a different way, and it will get you what you need. And if you don't like the sources that it's pulling from, that's maybe your key that this is something that you're not comfortable using AI with. And everybody, like I said at the beginning, uses it at their own different level. So for me, if I was to learn from it, I would, since I'm new to that sphere, I would probably look up like .edu sources, something about it, like some like scholarly resources to try to find out like what makes a dashboard accessible. And then if I'm seeing that it's pulling from resources I trust, I'll take its suggestions.
That's great. It looks like John just shared a really helpful link in the chat as well. And that makes just a really good point, Dex, about like ask what its sources are. That's something I think about a lot too when I'm asking for formulas before I copy paste things into it. Like, where did this actually come from? And I think we sometimes forget to ask those for the sources. So I think we're a minute or two over time, but I want to thank Dexter and John. This is a great presentation, really helpful information, and good demos to get us started down this path. So I think there's a few more minutes before the next session, but thank you to the two of you for your presentation, and thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks.